The blue note bends till breaking. We play the black keys, press fingers into guitar strings and quiver into callus. We play the hollows, the echo of our slapping tells the story of wind. Maybe hurricanes are how our ancestors return home. Maybe they take us with them in pieces, breathing and drinking all this dust and bone. We moan a map to be remembered. We howl as well as we hymn. A chorus, an opera, a medley. We are born knowing how to sing. We coax shadows out of hiding with a long, low note. We stare until trembling is more vibrato than fear. Our voices grow, even in silence. You are who I love for Denver after Aracelis Girmay. You, selling unlicensed sports merch on Federal, on Colfax, because the franchises got plenty and you are making your own way. You, singing to yourself in the parking lot, checking your baby hair in a car's side mirror. You, reading on the open mic. You, roasting green chiles on the side of the road and selling the bundles. You, pouring another cup of coffee. You, selling carnations pink and red on Colorado Boulevard. You, cussing in Greek, which means with your hands. You, keeping track of your children and grocery math as you walk the aisles. You, speaking to the magpies. You, quietly making a new friend. You, kissing at the park. You, in the dress and combat boots. You, with the eyebrow, lip, cheek piercing. You, with the courage to pray. You, whose body is a canvas full of stories. You, at the bus stop, tapping your foot and trying not to look afraid. You, fighting with the landlord who won't return your calls. You, predicting the snow by the smell of manure hovering. You in love with every sunset. You frowning at the brown cloud hovering over the skyline. You watching and wondering at the edge of the Platte River. You planting trees and organizing your neighbors for cleaner air, which you deserve. You who remember and tell the stories. You trudging out into the snow with delight or determination. You planting flowers and volunteering at the food bank. You placing the garment gently back on the hanger at the thrift shop and tucking it into the rack tenderly as if it was precious to someone once, as if it will be again. You, with rough hands from work and holding. You, with the car parked on your lawn. You, on the sidewalk, craning your neck up at the skyscrapers, looking for a patch of sky, wondering what is coming next. So in 2011, a dear friend invited me to a vigil at the ICE detention center in Aurora. And this was, I believe, 2011 for Valentine's Day. And we gathered outside the gates of the detention center and we read love poems and we sang songs loud enough for the detainees to hear us, we hoped. And so this is the poem I wrote then, and it is still every bit as relevant now. It's called, I Do Not Know How to Love You in English. I cannot tell by its rhythm where this heart was born. It is only music pulsing through palms. We know this when we hold hands, let whispers tickle ears, whatever language they assume. I do not know how to cry in English. No sé cómo llorar en español. Tears are born world citizens. They do not need to speak to find each other, to rush into rivers that cannot be dammed. I will not ask the wind where it is from. It would only answer with its coming and going, does not recognize these fences or lines, does not even see them. I will not ask the monarchs for a passport, will not pinch them from the air and pin them for their passage, will not shoot them as they fly away. I will not shush the roaring seas beating upon the border from another nation's shore, will not pretend its origin is worth less or more. We are each of us worth our weight in water or in papeles. I will not ask each grain of sand from whence it came, will not interrogate the sediments and segregate them by shade. I will not cast a net around the beaches. I do not know how to love you in English. No sé cómo te amo en español. Only know that all life begins with love that cannot be walled or conquered. I will not ask love where it is from. Only know that it resides in me, in the descansos dotting the desert. I do not know what language bullets speak, have only ever heard them whisper past my head in words I do not wish to remember or repeat, would rather press palm to palm and whisper poems. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, would rather smile, warm as stew-filled belly, and break bread. I will not ask the flames I cook with for identification when they burn more orange than red, white, or blue, as I do not know how to eat in English, no sé cómo comer en español. I do not know how to breathe in English, no sé cómo respirar en español. I do not know how to bleed in English, no sé cómo sangrar en español, but I think it is the same. Creo que es lo mismo con mis palabras y con mi lengua rota. Yo trato hablar with my words. And with my broken tongue, I try to speak.
Hi, I'm Andy O, host of The Night Side on KUVO Jazz every Sunday night from 9 to midnight. And I'm pleased and proud to have Suzi Q in here with me, performer, poet, civil rights activist, educator, community organizer. You do a lot of stuff.
I've been busy for my whole life, Andy.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming down and reading with us.
Thank you for having me.
One thing I want to ask you is, what's going on with you right now? What are you doing mostly?
Mostly what I'm doing right now is writing and teaching. That's a big part. And also doing a little bit of organizing of poets, right? So doing some arts organizing. I also sit on the council, the Denver County Cultural Council for SCFD.
Nice. All right.
So that's another kind of so we're heading into like a pretty busy season for that.
Yeah.
That definitely keeps me busy, but a lot of writing. I'm writing prose. I do a little bit of creative nonfiction and memoir, so that's been an interesting foray to enter into in the last few years. Still working on some singing and songwriting as well, and of course writing poetry every day. Teaching poetry, so I teach poetry primarily with adults right now. I teach with Lighthouse Writers Workshop. I also am the writer's director for a residency based in France called Château de Roquefort. And so I work with them virtually and all kinds of other things, right? Leading workshops and organizing the community to the best of my ability.
Just like always, busy.
In fact.
Yeah, ever since I've known you, that's been a thing.
Yeah, I like to stay active, use my life well.
Yeah. One thing I've asked all the poets is, what's it like to be a poet in the current atmosphere, in the way things are in the 21st century?
I think for me it just feels urgent, right? Poetry for me has always felt urgent. I think that, I think often, I hear the phrase, right, in times like these, and we do live in some wild times, and they feel in many ways unprecedented for us. Though when we zoom out a little bit, right, the world has always been on fire for some of us, I think about how I came into organizing in my very first protest. I grew up here in Denver. I've lived here my whole life. And you may remember on Martin Luther King Day in the 1990s, in the early 90s, there used to also be a Klan rally at the state capitol on Martin Luther King Day, right? Remember that?
Yep.
So when I was a teenager, young teen, and I protested at one of those Klan rallies, right? Because I was sick of it. So 1993, I believe it was. And a huge, riot broke out. There were all kinds of things happening. It's the first time I was ever pepper sprayed by police. It was, very exciting to be 14 years old and feeling like I was doing something and using my voice for something, right? Because, of course, I was yelling at them quite a lot. And so I think part of that, I couldn't sit with it and not say something, right? And I think about that. And I think poetry for me comes from a lot of the same place. I was raised in poetry. I was raised in music. So all of those things are very normal for me. And the need to express, they all come from the same place of just noticing and needing to interact with the world, right? And feeling things in ways that are much too big to contain inside my body, to just sit with it, And so I have to move. I have to say something. I have to be that person.
Yeah.
So, the organizing and the moving and the educating and I like to share what I have. Everything I teach, is something that I'm grateful someone else taught me, right? And so then it's my responsibility to continue sharing that as much as possible. And so, we're all very, very connected. And for me, I'm doing all of those things kind of all the time. They're very woven together for me.
Well, you started writing at a really young age.
I did, probably as soon as I could hold a pen.
How did that? What motivated you to go there? Was it just a natural thing, and it came out, or was there a role model of some sort, or?
All of the above. I think it started with, little nursery rhymes and the roses are red, violets are blue sort of things, right?
Yeah.
But I also was raised by my grandmother. We were raised in a very religious household, a very religious tradition. We went to church 5 times a week. When we weren't at church, we were probably listening to the Bible on tape or singing around the piano. And so it was a very musical household, but there was something sacred about verse, something
Yeah.
sacred about word that was given to us from a very, very young age. So I think part of it comes from that, but most of all, that her father was a poet. I never knew him. He died before I was born. But he was a poet, and thinking that, he was born in 1895, one generation outside of slavery, and he wrote love poems to my great-grandmother while he delivered the mail to her house. And that's how he won her heart, was sneaking these poems in.
Do you still have those poems?
And so I've like one of his poems that's published, but
Yeah.
I don't have any of the poems that he wrote for my great-grandmother.
Yeah.
But I know that he slid her these love poems. She played the piano, and he would listen to her play the piano through the window and write these odes to her, right? And so that's how he won her heart. So for many reasons, poetry is the reason I'm here, right?
Yeah,
The reason I'm alive.
yeah.
And so my grandmother always had a high regard for poetry. And also reciting poetry, memorizing poets. We were raised on, Paul Laurence Dunbar and Countee Cullen and Langston Hughes and many poets of the Harlem Renaissance particularly,
Yeah.
and Maya Angelou as well. So I think that poetry has always been a part of my life and part of my language. I also am the youngest in my family, in a big family, small house, which means very little privacy. And so if I had kept a diary, my siblings would have read it for sure. So writing poems also allowed me to write in code, allowed me to keep secrets, it allowed me to express myself, but keep a lot to myself at the same time and write in symbols.
Well, you have books published.
I do.
How do people get their hands on those?
They can find them, the links are on my website, that's an easy place, ordering through the publishers, or they can get them here locally at Shop at Matter. I believe they also have them available at Denver Public Library.
Okay, right. Well, thanks for coming down. Really appreciate it. It's good to always see you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, Andy.
You bet.